Many of the hidden secrets that help players relax and fall asleep actually predate the shattering of the Elden Ring, originating in a time of relative peace and ancient wisdom, a revelation that transforms our understanding of the lands between from a realm defined solely by war and ambition into something far more profound and layered. These are not merely Easter eggs or developer oversights tucked into forgotten corners of the map, but deliberate echoes of a world that once knew tranquility, architectural whispers of contemplation, and environmental storytelling so subtle it bypasses the conscious mind entirely to speak directly to something deeper within us. The gentle ambient sounds of distant waterfalls in Siofra River, the hypnotic sway of golden reeds in Altus Plateau, the rhythmic lapping of waves against the moonlight altar, the soft crackling of grace sites scattered across a broken world. Each of these sensory details carries within it the genetic memory of an age before chaos, before demigods tore the world apart in their hunger for power, before the very concept of a tarnished exile even existed. What makes Elden Ring uniquely suited to the strange and growing phenomenon of sleep inducing content is not its violence or its challenge, the aspects most players consciously engage with, but rather its commitment to building a world so dense with atmospheric detail, so rich in quiet moments of beauty nestled between its horrors, that it creates an almost meditative state when approached from a different angle. The game's soundscape alone represents hundreds of hours of compositional work, layered environmental audio that shifts based on time of day, weather patterns, proximity to ruins or water or ancient stone, all calibrated to create a sense of place so convincing that your nervous system responds to it as if it were real. When you strip away the adrenaline of combat, when you remove the frustration of repeated deaths and the dopamine hits of victory, what remains is something unexpected, a virtual space that mirrors the contemplative qualities of actual sacred sites, forests at dawn, abandoned temples where time moves differently. This is the secret that thousands of viewers have discovered, often by accident, when searching for ambient soundscapes or background noise to accompany sleep, that the lands between contain within their code and artistry a kind of digital lullaby, an unintentional but no less powerful meditation on impermanence, beauty, and the small pockets of peace that persist even in worlds defined by their brokenness. The phenomenon itself represents a fascinating collision between developer intent and emergent player behavior, between the game FromSoftware designed, a punishing action RPG meant to challenge and engage active players, and the game that exists in the cultural imagination, a vast environmental artwork that can be experienced passively, absorbed rather than conquered. To understand how a game built around difficulty and death became a tool for relaxation and sleep, to trace the hidden secrets that make this paradox possible, we must examine not just the game as it exists today, but the entire cosmology it depicts, the layers of history embedded in every texture and sound file, the way its world-building philosophy creates spaces that resonate with something primal in human consciousness. The lands between are not a single era frozen in time, but a palimpsest, a manuscript written over and over, where every age leaves traces that bleed through into the present, where the player character walks through geological and mythological strata simultaneously, where a single location might contain architectural elements from 5 different epochs, each telling a different story about what this world once was and what it has become. These layers are key to the game's sleep-inducing properties because they create a sense of depth that the mind can sink into, a complexity that does not demand to be fully understood, but simply invites endless, gentle exploration. The hidden secrets that facilitate this experience range from the obvious, designated quiet zones like the Church of Vows or the Laskiar ruins, to the obscure, specific combinations of location, time of day, and weather that produce moments of almost unbearable beauty. A shaft of light through storm clouds illuminating a field of gravestones, the way fog moves through the consecrated snowfield at night, the precise acoustics of certain underground chambers where your footsteps echo in patterns that feel almost musical. Some of these secrets are embedded in the game's lore, fragments of item descriptions that hint at a world before war, at scholars and artists and architects who built for purposes other than defense, at a civilization that valued contemplation and the observation of natural phenomena, that studied the stars not for power, but for understanding, that created gardens and libraries and places of worship that served no strategic function but existed simply as expressions of a culture that had space for such things. Other secrets are purely mechanical, the way certain areas are coded to have reduced enemy spawns or more passive AI behaviors, creating safe pockets where the player can exist without threat, where the game's systems relax their grip and allow for something closer to pure exploration or even virtual tourism. The developers at FromSoftware have never explicitly acknowledged this use case for their game, have never marketed Elden Ring as a relaxation tool or ambient experience, yet the care they put into environmental detail, into creating a world that feels lived in and ancient and real, inadvertently produced exactly the conditions necessary for this emergent phenomenon. There is a philosophy embedded in the game's design, inherited from Dark Souls and refined over multiple titles, that trusts players to find their own meaning, their own pace, their own relationship with the virtual space, a philosophy that refuses to hold hands or dictate experience. And this same trust creates room for players to use the game in ways never intended, to find peace in a game about war, to find rest in a game about struggle, to find secrets not by conquering, but by surrendering to the world's rhythms and allowing it to wash over them. The community that has grown around this particular use of Elden Ring represents a fascinating subset of the game's broader player base, people who may never beat a single major boss, but who have spent hundreds of hours exploring, who know the map more intimately than players who have completed multiple playthroughs because they have moved through it slowly, meditatively, without the tunnel vision that objective-driven gameplay creates, who have discovered visual details and environmental storytelling moments that even dedicated lore hunters have missed because they were moving too quickly, too focused on the next fight, the next revelation, the next achievement. These players have created their own archives of knowledge, documented the best locations for rain sounds, for wind through ruins, for the specific quality of light in different regions at different times, have mapped the game not according to boss locations or item placements, but according to atmospheric qualities, emotional resonances, the subjective experience of peace or melancholy or awe that different locations evoke. This represents a form of play that game studies scholars are only beginning to understand and categorize: non-goal oriented interaction with virtual spaces, the use of game environments as contemplative tools, as mood regulators in the ancient past, long before the Golden Order would impose its rigid laws upon the world, long before the Erdtree as we know it pierced the heavens with its luminous branches. There existed something far older and far stranger. This was the primordial age, an era so distant that even the most learned scholars of the lands between can only glimpse its truth through fragments of memory preserved in stone, in bone, and in the very essence of certain creatures that still walk the world today. This was the age of the Crucible, a time when life itself flowed from a single unified source of raw, unrefined power. The Crucible was not a tree in the way you might imagine one. It was something more fundamental, more primal. Think of it as the melting pot of all life, a churning cauldron of golden energy from which every living thing emerged without distinction or separation. Where the later Erdtree would establish hierarchies and order, the Crucible knew only unity. All life was one life. All beings shared in the same essential nature. The energy that would later be refined and controlled as grace, that golden blessing bestowed selectively by the greater will, existed here in its most natural, unfiltered state. It simply was, flowing through the land like an invisible river, connecting all things in a web of vital force that required no faith, no devotion, no worthiness to access. This was a world that hummed. If you had stood in those primordial lands, you would have felt it in your bones, a vibration so deep and so constant that it became part of the background of existence itself. The Crucible's energy provided a foundational calm, an almost subconscious sense that everything was connected, everything was whole. There was no death as we understand it now, no true separation between one state of being and another. Life simply transformed, cycling through the Crucible's endless permutations. This gentle, persistent hum was the heartbeat of the world, and it asked nothing of those who lived within its influence except that they exist, that they be. The physical manifestation of this primordial power took the form of what ancient texts refer to as the Great Tree. This was not yet the Erdtree, not the golden beacon that would later dominate the landscape and the faith of millions. The Great Tree was rougher, wilder, less concerned with the aesthetic perfection that would characterize its successor. Its bark was thick and gnarled, its roots dug deep into the earth, not to anchor a symbol of divine order, but to draw up the raw essence of the world itself. From its trunk flowed golden sap, thick and viscous, and this sap was not merely symbolic of life, it was life. It was the concentrated essence of the Crucible's power, made tangible, a substance that could heal, transform, and sustain in ways that later scholars would struggle to comprehend. In this age, life was undifferentiated in a way that would seem almost alien to those who came after. The rigid boundaries between species, between forms, between what was human and what was beast, these distinctions simply did not exist in the way they would later. All creatures were expressions of the Crucible, and the Crucible contained multitudes. A being might possess scales and feathers, horns and wings, the strength of a lion and the cunning of a serpent all at once. These were not aberrations or mutations. They were the natural state of things. The Crucible embraced diversity, not as a collection of separate types, but as a spectrum of possibility, all flowing from the same source. Among the most magnificent expressions of the Crucible's power were the ancient dragons. These were not the lesser drakes or wyverns that would populate the world in later ages. These were true dragons, beings of such immense power and majesty that they ruled the skies as undisputed lords of the primordial world. Their scales shimmered with an inner light, reflecting the golden energy of the Crucible itself. Their breath was not merely fire, but a manifestation of pure elemental force, lightning that could split mountains and reduce stone to glass. These dragons existed in perfect harmony with the Crucible's nature, their very bodies a testament to the unified life force that permeated everything. Chief among these ancient dragons was Placidusax, a being of such legendary status that even after ages of decline and the shattering of the old world, the memory of his reign persists. Placidusax was not merely a dragon, he was the Elden Lord of his age, though that title would mean something different then than it would in the era of the Golden Order. He served as the consort and champion of a god whose name has been lost to time, a deity who existed before the greater will turned its attention to the lands between. Placidusax possessed not two heads, as dragons of later ages might, but five, each one capable of independent thought, each one a conduit for devastating power. He ruled from a seat of power beyond time itself, waiting through the ages for the return of the god he served, a god who fled or vanished when the old order began to crumble. The skies in this primordial age belonged to these dragons absolutely. They nested in the highest peaks, where the stone itself seemed to have been shaped by their presence over countless generations. Their roars echoed across vast distances, not as challenges or threats, but as songs, as communications in a language that predated words. Other creatures of the air, the ancestors of the birds and the flying beasts that would come later, shared the skies but always in deference to these ancient lords. The dragons were not tyrants, though. They were simply the apex of what the Crucible could create, the most perfect fusion of power, intelligence, and elemental mastery. But dragons were not the only inheritors of the Crucible's gifts. The beastmen, creatures that walked upright, but bore the features of lions, wolves, and other predators, thrived in this age as well. They were not the degraded, savage things that later ages would reduce them to. In the time of the Crucible, beastmen possessed their own culture, their own understanding of the world. They built structures, though not in the architectural styles that would come later. They honored the Crucible in their own ways, recognizing that they were part of the great unified whole. Their strength was prodigious, their senses keen, and their connection to the natural flow of energy gave them an intuitive understanding of the world that more civilized races would lose. To protect and serve the great tree itself, there arose a cadre of warriors who would become legendary, the Crucible Knights. These were not knights in the chivalric sense that would develop under the Golden Order. They were something older, something more primal. They were champions who had been touched so deeply by the Crucible's power that it manifested physically in their very bodies. Where later knights would rely on training and equipment, the Crucible Knights embodied the raw, unrefined power of the primordial age itself. They were living proof that the boundaries between forms were permeable, that a warrior could be more than simply human. The transformations that marked the Crucible Knights were varied and magnificent. Some sprouted great wings from their backs, not delicate or decorative, but powerful appendages of scale and membrane that could carry an armored warrior into the sky. Others grew horns that curved from their helms, not ornamental but actual bone, extensions of their skulls that could gore an enemy or channel the Crucible's energy in devastating attacks. Tails emerged from some, thick and muscular, providing balance and serving as additional weapons in combat. These were not curses or afflictions. In the age of the Crucible, such features were marks of honor, visible signs that a warrior had been blessed by the primordial life force itself. The powers these knights wielded were equally diverse, reflecting the multifaceted nature of the Crucible. One knight might breathe gouts of flame, channeling the draconic aspect of the unified life force. Another might possess the strength to uproot trees or shatter boulders with bare hands, drawing on the might of the great beasts. Still others moved with a speed and grace that seemed impossible for armored warriors, their bodies enhanced by aspects of predatory animals. They fought not with the disciplined formations that would characterize later military orders, but with a fluid, almost instinctive style that reflected their deep connection to the primal energy that suffused all things. These knights served the great tree with absolute devotion, but it was not the devotion of religious fervor. It was something more fundamental, a recognition that they and the tree were part of the same whole. To protect the tree was to protect themselves, to protect all life. They stood watch in groves where the golden sap pooled, ensuring that the essence of life itself remained undisturbed. They drove away threats, though in this age, threats were fewer and less existential than they would become. Their presence was both guardian and symbol, a reminder that the crucible's power could manifest in forms both beautiful and terrible. The beastmen, including the enigmatic figure known as Gurranq, were among the earliest intelligent inhabitants of the lands between. These creatures, with their leonine features and powerful physiques, represented one of the first civilizations to emerge under the Crucible's influence. Unlike the humans, who would later dominate these lands, the beastmen possessed a fundamental understanding of the world's primordial nature. Their society was built not on conquest or expansion, but on reverence and stewardship. They did not seek to control the forces around them, but rather to live in harmony with the raw, untamed power that flowed through every living thing. The beastmen revered the great tree with a devotion that bordered on the religious, though their worship was more primal than the structured faith that would later define the Golden Order. They constructed their settlements in close proximity to its roots, building their temples and dwellings into the very earth where the tree's massive tendrils spread. The ancient ruins of Farum Azula, though primarily associated with the dragons, contain evidence of beastmen habitation dating back to this primordial age. Stone carvings depict these creatures engaged in rituals around the tree's roots, their clawed hands raised in supplication or celebration. They understood, perhaps better than any who came after, that the tree was not merely a physical entity, but a living conduit for the Crucible's boundless energy. The Crucible's power during this age was raw and untamed, not yet refined into the Golden Order's specific form of grace. Where the Golden Order would later impose structure, hierarchy, and rules upon the world's fundamental energies, the Crucible offered something far more primal. Its power flowed freely, without direction or purpose beyond the simple imperative to grow, to change, to become. This energy manifested in countless ways throughout the natural world. Plants grew with aggressive vitality, their forms twisted and magnificent. Animals developed traits that defied simple categorization, blending characteristics from multiple species in ways that would later be deemed unnatural or monstrous. The land itself seemed alive with possibility, every stone and stream touched by the Crucible's transformative influence. The concept of a spirit or soul was intrinsically linked to the Crucible's unified life force during this era. There was no clear distinction between the living and the dead, between the physical and the spiritual. When a creature died, its essence did not depart to some distant afterlife, but rather returned to the Crucible, absorbed back into the great churning mass of life energy that permeated everything. This cycle was visible, tangible. The beastmen could see the spirits of their ancestors lingering near the great tree's roots, not as ghosts in the later sense, but as visible manifestations of the crucible's power. These spirits were not trapped or lost, but simply existed in a different state, their energy waiting to be reborn into new forms. Death was not an ending, but a transformation, another expression of the crucible's endless capacity for change. The omens, those beings who would later be reviled and persecuted for their physical mutations, were not yet considered accursed during this primordial age. The horns, the twisted limbs, the strange protrusions that would mark an omen in later eras were simply natural expressions of the crucible's power. Every intelligent being bore some mark of the crucible's influence, whether obvious or subtle. The beastmen themselves were proof of this, their leonine features and bestial strength, clear indicators of the crucible's transformative touch. In an age where change was celebrated rather than feared, where mutation was seen as growth rather than corruption, the traits that would later define omens were simply another variation in the endless spectrum of life. Children born with horns were not hidden away in shame, but celebrated as particularly blessed by the crucible's power. The crucible's power was seen as a blessing during this era, granting strength and vitality to those who embraced it rather than feared it. Warriors who bore the most dramatic physical changes were often the most respected, their bodies still living testaments to the crucible's favor. The Crucible Knights, though they would not be formally organized until much later, trace their philosophical origins to this age. The idea that one could channel the Crucible's power through martial prowess, that physical transformation could be deliberately cultivated rather than merely accepted, began during these ancient times. The beastmen developed fighting techniques that incorporated their bestial traits, using their claws and fangs not as unfortunate deformities, but as weapons to be honed and perfected. The roots of the great tree spread throughout the lands between, connecting all life in a vast underground network. These roots were not merely physical structures, but conduits for the crucible's energy, channels through which the primordial life force flowed from one end of the world to the other. Where the roots broke through to the surface, life flourished with particular intensity. These sites became sacred to the beastmen and other early inhabitants, places of pilgrimage and power. The catacombs that would later serve as burial sites were originally natural caverns formed around these root clusters. The early peoples did not dig these chambers, but discovered them, vast underground spaces where the roots had pushed aside earth and stone in their relentless growth. The network of roots created a form of connection between all living things that was more than metaphorical. Plants growing near one root cluster could in some sense communicate with plants growing near another cluster miles away. Animals that drank from pools fed by root-touched springs found themselves sharing dreams and instincts with creatures they had never met. The beastmen, living in such close proximity to the roots, developed an almost telepathic connection with one another and with the natural world around them. They could sense disturbances in the crucible's flow, feel when some distant part of the world was in pain or flourishing. This interconnection fostered a sense of unity and shared purpose that would be lost in later ages when the Golden Order's rigid hierarchy replaced the Crucible's organic network. The primordial Erdtree's golden leaves shimmered with the unadulterated energy of the Crucible, each one a perfect expression of life's raw potential. Unlike the leaves of the later Erdtree, which would glow with the refined, controlled radiance of the Golden Order, these primordial leaves pulsed with chaotic, ever-changing light. Their color shifted from gold to green to amber, reflecting the crucible's constant state of flux. When these leaves fell, which they did rarely, they did not wither and decay, but instead transformed into other forms. A single leaf might become a swarm of golden insects, or dissolve into a pool of shimmering liquid that soaked into the earth, or crystallize into a stone that hummed with residual power. The beastmen collected these fallen leaves with great reverence, using them in their rituals and ceremonies, though they never hoarded them. The leaves were meant to return to the crucible eventually, and holding them too long was seen as disrupting the natural cycle. The era was marked by a natural cycle of life and death, without the rigid control of a defined order imposing its will upon the world. Creatures were born, lived, and died according to their own nature, rather than according to prescribed roles or destinies. There were no gods dictating proper behavior, no divine laws separating the righteous from the wicked. Conflict existed, certainly, as predators hunted prey and different species competed for resources, but this conflict was natural rather than ideological. The dragons did not war against the beastmen because of some fundamental incompatibility of purpose, but simply because their territories and needs occasionally overlapped. When such conflicts arose, they were resolved through strength and cunning, and the victors bore no particular malice toward the defeated. This absence of imposed order did not mean chaos or suffering, at least not in the way later ages would understand those concepts. The crucible's influence created its own form of balance, a dynamic equilibrium that arose naturally from the interplay of countless living things. When one species grew too numerous, predators would naturally increase to match. When a region became overgrown with vegetation, fires or herbivores would thin it out. The system was self-regulating, requiring no divine intervention or mortal management. Death was common, but not cruel, simply another necessary part of the cycle. The beastmen understood this implicitly, accepting their own mortality without fear, because they knew their essence would return to the crucible and eventually be reborn in some new form. The primordial age represented a time of pure potential, when the world was still young and malleable enough to take any shape. The forms that life would eventually settle into, the structures that would define later civilizations, had not yet hardened into permanence. Every being contained within itself the possibility of radical transformation, of becoming something entirely different from what it had been. This was the crucible's greatest gift, and to those who would later seek to control it, its greatest danger. A world of infinite possibility is a world that cannot be ruled, cannot be ordered, cannot be made to serve any single vision or purpose. The age of the crucible would not last forever, but while it endured, the lands between knew a freedom and vitality that would never be fully recaptured. As we move forward from the primordial age of the crucible, we arrive at a pivotal turning point in the history of the lands between, the era before the Shattering, when the Golden Order was first established and began to reshape reality itself. This period marks the transition from the wild, chaotic blending of life forms into a structured, divinely ordained hierarchy that would define civilization for ages to come. In this transformative era, the Greater Will, an outer god of immense power existing beyond the stars, turned its attention to the lands between and selected a champion to serve as its vessel. The Greater Will chose an Empyrean, a being capable of ascending to godhood and channeling divine authority. This chosen one was Marika, a figure whose origins remain shrouded in mystery, though fragments of evidence suggest she may have emerged from the Numen, a race of long-lived people from outside the lands between. An Empyrean is not simply a powerful individual, but rather someone marked by destiny itself, possessing the unique capacity to house a god within their mortal form and serve as a conduit for cosmic forces. The selection of Marika was not random chance, but a deliberate act by the greater will to impose order upon a world that had existed in a state of primordial flux. Marika's ascension to godhood fundamentally altered the nature of existence in the lands between. She did not simply claim power, but became the living embodiment of a new cosmic principle, establishing what would be known as the Golden Order, a metaphysical framework that governed the laws of life, death, and causality itself. This was not merely a political system or religious doctrine, but an actual restructuring of reality's underlying rules. Where the crucible had allowed for boundless mutation and the blending of all life, the Golden Order imposed categories, hierarchies, and fixed forms. It brought stability, yes, but also rigidity, replacing the wild vitality of the primordial age with divine law. To anchor this new order in physical reality, the Greater Will sent an envoy, a living embodiment of its will that would serve as both enforcer and symbol of divine authority. This envoy was the Elden Beast, a creature of pure golden light that descended from the cosmos like a falling star. The Elden Beast was not merely a messenger, but became something far more significant. Upon its arrival in the lands between, it transformed into the Elden Ring itself, the fundamental ordering principle that would govern all existence. The Elden Ring is not a physical object in the conventional sense, but rather a metaphysical construct, a collection of great runes that each embody different aspects of reality. These runes, when unified within the ring, create the laws that determine how life, death, order, and fate function throughout the realm. With the Elden Ring established within her, Marika possessed the authority to reshape these fundamental laws. One of her most consequential acts was the removal of a specific rune from the Elden Ring, an act that would have profound implications for all who lived under her rule. She sealed away destined death, the natural principle that ensured all living things would eventually perish. This rune, also known as the Rune of Death, was entrusted to Malekith, her loyal shadow and half-brother, who would guard it faithfully. By removing destined death from the natural order, Marika granted immortality to those blessed by the Erdtree, particularly the demigods, her own divine offspring. This was not true immortality in the sense of invulnerability. Bodies could still be destroyed, but souls could no longer pass beyond the veil of death. Instead, those who died would return to the Erdtree, their essence absorbed back into the great golden tree, to be recycled and reborn. This created a closed system of life and death, one that the greater will could control completely. Yet even a god cannot rule alone, and Marika understood that divine authority required earthly power to enforce it. She chose as her consort and first Elden Lord a warrior of extraordinary might named Godfrey. Before taking this title, he was known as Huara Lu, a chieftain of the Badlands, a man of savage strength and indomitable will. Godfrey was no refined nobleman, but a warrior who had proven himself through countless battles, a leader who commanded absolute loyalty from those who followed him. Marika saw in him not just strength, but the capacity to unite the fractured tribes and kingdoms of the lands between under a single banner. The title of Elden Lord was not merely ceremonial, it represented the earthly counterpart to Marika's divine authority, the sword arm of the Golden Order that would enforce its will through military might. As the Golden Order solidified its hold on the realm, the Erdtree itself grew to magnificent proportions, reaching heights that seemed to touch the heavens. Its trunk became massive beyond measure, visible from every corner of the lands between, and its canopy spread wide, casting golden light across the landscape. The leaves of the Erdtree glowed with an inner radiance, and at night the tree illuminated the darkness like a second sun. This was not merely a symbol of divine power, but an actual source of grace, the golden blessing that flowed from the greater will through Marika and into the world. Those who could perceive the guidance of grace would see golden light pointing them toward their destined path, a literal manifestation of divine will directing the actions of the faithful. From the union of Marika and Godfrey came the first generation of demigods, children who inherited both divine essence and mortal strength. The eldest and most beloved was Godwyn, who would later be known as the Golden, a prince of such noble bearing and martial prowess that he became the very embodiment of the Golden Order's ideals. Godwyn represented everything the New Age aspired to be, combining physical might with grace, wisdom, and an unwavering commitment to his mother's vision. But not all of Marika's children were blessed with such fortune. She also bore twin sons, Morgott and Mog, but these children were born bearing the curse of the omen, a condition that caused horns to sprout from their bodies in a grotesque echo of the Crucible's chaotic blessings. In the age of the Crucible, such features had been seen as signs of strength and vitality, but under the Golden Order's rigid categories, they were deemed impure, a shameful reminder of the primordial past that the New Age sought to suppress. These twin princes were hidden away beneath the capital, imprisoned in the sewers where their existence could be concealed from public view, a dark secret at the heart of the Golden Dynasty. As the Golden Order established itself, new forms of magic emerged, shaped by the principles of the Erdtree and the Greater Will's cosmic authority. Incantations, prayers that channeled divine power through faith, were developed by the clergy who served Marika. Many of these early incantations focused on healing and protection, offering comfort and security to those who lived under the Golden Order's rule. The Erdtree Heal incantation, for example, could mend grievous wounds by channeling the Erdtree's vital essence, while protective barriers of golden light could shield the faithful from harm. These were not merely practical tools, but expressions of the Golden Order's promise that those who submitted to its authority would be cared for and protected. Sorceries, which drew power from the study of the stars and the fundamental forces of the cosmos, also flourished during this period, though they maintained a certain independence from the religious hierarchy. The scholars of the Academy of Raya Lucaria, far to the north, pursued their studies of glintstone sorcery, seeking to understand the celestial mechanics that governed reality. The lands between. During this early Golden Age contained vast territories that remained largely untouched by civilization, expansive landscapes of breathtaking beauty where nature existed in a state of serene equilibrium. Rolling hills covered in golden grass stretched to distant horizons, ancient forests stood in quiet majesty, and crystalline lakes reflected the Erdtree's light. These were places of peace, where the chaos of the Crucible had been replaced not by rigid order, but by a gentle harmony. Travelers could wander for days through meadows where the only sounds were birdsong and wind rustling through grass, finding rest beneath trees that had stood for centuries. But the Golden Order's expansion was not achieved through peace alone. Godfrey, bearing the title of Elden Lord and commanding the Golden Host, Marika's vast army of devoted warriors led campaign after campaign to bring all the lands between under the Erdtree's dominion. His greatest and most brutal conquest was waged against the fire giants who dwelt in the frozen mountain tops of the giants, far to the north, where snow fell eternally and the cold could kill an unprepared traveler in minutes. These giants were not mere oversized humans, but an ancient race who served their own deity, the fell god of fire, a one-eyed god of flame whose power rivaled even the greater will's authority. The fire giants commanded flames that could melt stone and reduce entire armies to ash, and they fought with the desperation of a people defending not just their homeland, but their very right to exist. The war against the giants was long and merciless, a conflict that tested even Godfrey's legendary strength. The Golden Host suffered terrible losses in the frozen peaks, but Godfrey pressed forward with relentless determination, understanding that Marika would accept nothing less than total victory. Eventually, through superior numbers, divine blessing, and Godfrey's tactical brilliance, the fire giants were defeated. Their fell god was struck down, though not destroyed entirely, its essence bound and diminished. In a final act of calculated cruelty, Marika cursed the last surviving giant to serve as an eternal guardian of the flame of ruin, the sacred fire that burned at the heart of the giant's forge. This giant was condemned to tend the very flame that represented his people's power, ensuring it would never be extinguished, but also never be used against the Golden Order again. As the Golden Order's power solidified, Queen Marika made a pivotal, and some would argue, ruthless decision to ensure its continued expansion and the unwavering devotion of her subjects. Godfrey, her beloved consort and the first Elden Lord, had served his purpose. His victories had established the Golden Order's dominion, but his heart still thrummed with the primal joy of battle, a spirit that no longer aligned with Marika's vision for a tranquil, ordered realm under the Erdtree's eternal golden light. The warriors who had fought alongside him, the very backbone of his conquests, were likewise deemed a potential threat to this new, peaceful era. These were the Tarnished, a collective term for those who, through various circumstances, had lost the grace of the Erdtree, that golden light visible in the eyes of those favored by the greater will. Marika, with the subtle manipulation that would come to define her reign, stripped Godfrey's warriors of their grace, effectively severing their connection to the Erdtree and the lands between. This act of spiritual expulsion was not merely symbolic. It was a profound severing, leaving them adrift, their purpose seemingly lost. Following this, Marika then turned her attention to Godfrey himself. In a move that must have been agonizing for both, she banished him from the lands between entirely. This wasn't a mere exile to a distant corner of the realm. It was a decree that sent him beyond the fog, into the unknown. She didn't just banish him, she stripped him of his title as Elden Lord, sending him away to become a mere Tarnished, a warrior without a kingdom, without a god, and without the golden grace that had once defined his very being. Her words to him, though unrecorded, must have been laced with a bittersweet conviction, a necessary sacrifice for the greater good of her burgeoning empire. She knew his spirit, his lust for battle, would never truly be quenched within the confines of her ordered world. He was too wild, too untamed, a relic of a more savage age. This banishment, however, was not an act of malice but a calculated move, a long-term plan that would only reveal its true purpose centuries later. Marika, ever the strategist, understood that some seeds must be sown far from the garden to bear fruit in due time. Godfrey, though stripped of his grace and banished, was not broken. He was a warrior to his core, and a warrior without a fight is merely waiting for the next one. He journeyed to the Badlands, a harsh and unforgiving territory beyond the reach of the Erdtree's golden light. There, he shed the mantle of Godfrey, first Elden Lord, and embraced a new identity, Hora Lu, warrior. In the Badlands, he continued to fight, not for conquest or glory, but for the sheer joy of battle, for the raw, visceral experience of pitting his strength against worthy foes. He wrestled with beasts, clashed with formidable warriors, and through every struggle he grew stronger, his spirit hardening, his resolve unyielding. He became a legend in his own right in those desolate lands, a testament to the enduring power of a warrior's heart, even when stripped of all divine favor. This period of self-imposed exile and constant combat was crucial for Marika's future plans, though Godfrey himself was likely unaware of the grand design. He was being forged anew, tempered in the fires of adversity, prepared for a return that would shake the very foundations of the lands between. Even as Godfrey battled in the Badlands, Marika's ambitions for the Golden Order continued to evolve. She understood that while a singular, powerful figure like Godfrey could establish dominance, a more subtle and adaptable force was needed to truly consolidate and expand her influence. This next phase required a champion who could navigate the complexities of diplomacy and magic, a figure less driven by raw strength and more by strategic brilliance. To achieve this, Marika undertook an act of profound self-sacrifice and spiritual alchemy. She shattered her own spirit, a feat of immense power and will, to create Radagon. Radagon was not merely an emanation or an avatar. He was a distinct entity, a champion forged from Marika's own being, imbued with her intellect, her unwavering devotion to the Golden Order, and a formidable mastery of incantations and sorcery. This act was a testament to Marika's unique nature as a deity, her ability to manipulate her own essence for her grand designs. Radagon was destined to lead her armies, not through brute force alone, but through a combination of martial prowess and intellectual cunning. Radagon's emergence marked a new chapter in the Golden Order's expansion. His first major undertaking was to lead the Golden Order's forces against the Carian royal family in the Liurnian Wars. The Carian royal family, based in the majestic Raya Lucarian Academy in the shimmering azure land of Liurnia of the Lakes, represented a formidable challenge to the Golden Order's burgeoning dominance. Unlike the tribal chieftains and beastmen that Godfrey had subdued, the Carians were masters of glintstone sorcery, wielding arcane powers that could rival the Golden Order's incantations. Their academy was a bastion of knowledge and magical might, and their forces were well trained and disciplined. The Liurnian Wars were not swift, decisive battles, but prolonged, attritional conflicts, a clash of ideology and power between the Erdtree's golden grace and the moon's cold, starry magic. Radagon, with his strategic brilliance and potent incantations, proved to be an exceptional commander, pushing the Golden Order's forces deep into Carian territory. The conflict was brutal, marked by devastating magical duels and fierce ground engagements, staining the beautiful lakes of Liurnia with the blood of countless warriors and sorcerers. Despite Radagon's prowess, the Carian royal family, under the leadership of their formidable queen Rennala, proved to be an equally unyielding opponent. The wars raged for an extended period, with neither side able to achieve a decisive victory. The sheer magical power wielded by the Carians, particularly by Rennala herself, who was a peerless sorceress, created a stalemate. Both sides suffered heavy losses, and the prospect of a complete conquest seemed increasingly remote. Recognizing the futility of continued bloodshed and the drain on resources, both the Golden Order and the Carian royal family eventually reached a truce. This was not a surrender, but a strategic cessation of hostilities, a mutual acknowledgement that neither could fully subjugate the other without incurring catastrophic losses. This truce, born of necessity, paved the way for a more diplomatic solution, one that would bind the two powerful factions together in an unexpected alliance. The truce quickly blossomed into a more permanent and surprising union. To solidify the peace and further integrate the Carian royal family into the broader political landscape of the lands between, Radagon married Rennala, Queen of the Full Moon. This was a union of immense political and magical significance, merging the golden authority of the Erdtree with the ancient stargazing power of the Carians. It was a testament to Radagon's diplomatic skill and Marika's overarching vision, demonstrating a willingness to incorporate powerful, independent factions rather than simply crushing them. The marriage was a grand affair, likely celebrated across both the Golden Order's territories and the Carian lands, signifying a new era of cooperation and shared governance. Through this marriage, the Golden Order extended its influence, not through conquest, but through alliance, subtly weaving the Carians' ancient traditions into the tapestry of the Erdtree's dominion. From this extraordinary union, 3 children were born, each destined to play a crucial role in the future of the lands between and the unfolding drama of the Shattering. Rennala gave birth to Radagon's children, Rykard, Radan, and Ranni. Rykard, the eldest, would grow to be a fearsome demigod, driven by a boundless ambition and a fascination with forbidden powers. Radan, a colossal warrior, would become known as the Star Scourge, a master of gravity magic and a figure of immense strength and pride. And Ranni, the enigmatic and ethereal daughter, would become an Empyrean, a being chosen by the Two Fingers with the potential to ascend to godhood and a master of cold, moonlit sorcery. These 3 demigods, born of the union between the Golden Order and the Carian royal family, embodied the potent blend of their parents' powers and ideologies, representing a new generation that would inherit the complex legacy of their lineage. Their birth further cemented the alliance, creating a powerful dynastic link that seemed unbreakable. However, the political landscape of the lands between was ever shifting, and Marika's plans were far from complete. After a period of time, the exact duration of which is shrouded in the mists of history, Marika summoned Radagon back to the Erdtree. This summons was not a request, but a divine decree, a call for his return to his original source. Upon his return, Marika performed another act of profound spiritual manipulation, one that would alter the very nature of their beings and the foundation of the Golden Order. She took him as her second consort, but this was no ordinary marriage. Instead, they became one being, a singular deity with 2 distinct aspects. Marika and Radagon were now 2 sides of the same coin, a unified godhead embodying both the feminine and masculine principles of the Golden Order. This act of merging was not only a symbolic representation of the Golden Order's comprehensive power, but also a practical one, consolidating divine authority and eliminating any potential ideological or political schisms that might arise from separate divine entities. This union, however, also hinted at a deeper, more complex truth about Marika's nature and her relationship with the greater will, a truth that would only fully unravel in the wake of the Shattering. With Marika and Radagon now unified as a singular divine entity, the Golden Order's influence spread across the entirety of the lands between, establishing its dominance and its immutable laws. The era of conquest by brute force was largely over, replaced by an era of consolidation and unchallenged authority. The Golden Order's tenets, its incantations, its political structures, and its societal norms became the prevailing force throughout the land. The Erdtree, glowing with its golden grace, stood as the undeniable symbol of this dominion, its roots reaching deep into the earth and its branches touching the heavens. Its blessings were bestowed, its curses enacted, and its will was law. The minor demigods, children of Marika and Godfrey, and the demigods born of Radagon and Ranalla, all contributed to this vast network of power, each ruling over their respective domains under the watchful eye of the unified Marika Radagon. This period marked the zenith of the Golden Order's power, an era of apparent peace and prosperity, where the golden light of the Erdtree shone brightest, seemingly destined to last for eternity. The foundations of this golden age, however, were built on secrets, sacrifices, and a precarious balance that would ultimately prove unsustainable, setting the stage for the cataclysmic events that would follow. The stage was set, the players were in place, and the unseen forces of fate were already beginning to stir, preparing for the dramatic unraveling of this seemingly perfect order. As the nascent Golden Order solidified its grip on the lands between, we transition from its early formative years into what would become its glorious zenith. This period, known as the Golden Age, marks the true flowering of Queen Marika's vision, a time of unprecedented prosperity and relative peace under the unwavering gaze of the Erdtree. It is here, within the heart of the Golden Order's dominion, that we witness the establishment of a truly unified realm, a dominion forged through both divine decree and martial might. Marika, now firmly established as the reigning deity, meticulously crafted the Golden Order, not merely as a faith, but as the foundational bedrock of all political and social structures within the lands between. Its tenets, emphasizing order, stability, and the Erdtree's divine grace, permeated every aspect of life. Churches and cathedrals dedicated to the Golden Order sprang up across the land, their spires reaching towards the golden boughs of the Erdtree, visible from nearly every corner of the unified territories. The clergy, known as the Two Fingers, served as intermediaries between Marika and her subjects, interpreting her will and disseminating the dogma of the Golden Order. This era saw the codification of laws, the establishment of a centralized administration, and the systematic integration of various disparate tribes and kingdoms under a single overarching authority. Education, art, and infrastructure flourished, all imbued with the aesthetic and philosophical principles of the Golden Order. The very air seemed to hum with the Erdtree's blessings, a tangible sense of well-being that touched high and low alike. The concept of grace, the guiding light bestowed by the Erdtree, became a central theme, influencing everything from individual conduct to grand strategic decisions. Those who followed the path of grace were rewarded, while those who strayed were deemed tarnished, or worse, heretical. This was a meticulously constructed societal framework designed for absolute control and sustained prosperity, all under the benevolent, yet ultimately unyielding rule of Queen Marika. At the vanguard of this expansion, the very embodiment of the Golden Order's martial might, stood Godfrey, the first as Elden Lord. He was not merely a consort to Marika, but her chosen champion, the architect of her dominion, and the unparalleled general of her armies. Godfrey's campaigns were legendary, a relentless march that brought the disparate factions of the lands between to heel. His strength was not just physical, though tales of his prowess on the battlefield bordered on the mythical. It was also a strength of will, a fierce determination to see Marika's vision of a unified realm realized. He led his warriors, the Tarnished, a people blessed with the ability to see grace, into countless battles, always emerging victorious. From the misty shores of Limgrave to the volcanic peaks of Mount Gelmir, his banners flew, signaling the inexorable expansion of the Erdtree's dominion. He faced down ancient kings, defiant warlords, and monstrous beasts, his axe, the legendary regalia of Eokade, splitting shields and spirits with equal measure. His raw, untamed ferocity in combat earned him the revered and perhaps feared title of Lord of the Battlefield. He was a force of nature, a living legend whose very presence inspired both awe and terror. His campaigns were not merely about conquest, they were about assimilation, about bringing the light of the Golden Order to every corner of the land, whether by persuasion or by force. The tapestry of the lands between, once a patchwork of warring states, was being rewoven into a single, grand design with the Erdtree at its heart and Godfrey as its unwavering protector. During this time of unprecedented growth and consolidation, the Erdtree's blessings were not merely symbolic, they were a tangible, life-sustaining force. Its golden boughs reached into the very fabric of existence, providing comfort, sustenance, and a sense of divine order to the inhabitants. The Erdtree's sap, often referred to as dew or grace, was believed to possess healing properties and to imbue those who partook of it with vitality. It was a source of light, warmth, and spiritual nourishment, a constant reminder of Marika's benevolent rule and the Golden Order's promise of eternal life. The very air around the Erdtree, and indeed throughout much of the lands between, seemed infused with a golden luminescence, a palpable sense of peace and prosperity. This widespread blessing contributed significantly to the era's relative peace, as the basic needs of the populace were largely met, reducing the impetus for widespread conflict or rebellion. It fostered a sense of unity and shared purpose, binding the diverse peoples of the lands between together under the Erdtree's golden embrace. However, this golden age was not without its shadows, its hidden truths that Marika and the Golden Order sought to suppress. The Crucible, the primordial form of the Erdtree, represented a more ancient, untamed, and chaotic aspect of life. It was a time when all life was intermingled, when horns, wings, and tails were not aberrations, but natural expressions of vitality. As the Golden Order rose to prominence, it systematically suppressed the overt manifestations of the Crucible. Its raw, untamed power, seen as antithetical to the ordered and refined nature of the Erdtree, was deemed archaic and undesirable. While the Golden Order could not erase the Crucible entirely, its aspects were integrated into life in a controlled, often sublimated manner. The very concept of life within the Golden Order was a refined, ordered version of the Crucible's primordial chaos. This suppression was a deliberate act of cultural and spiritual engineering aimed at presenting a unified, pristine image of creation under Marika's rule. Any overt remnants of the Crucible were viewed with suspicion, if not outright revulsion. This suppression had profound and tragic consequences for those born with visible crucible aspects. These individuals, known as the Omen, were marked by horns, scales, or other physical traits reminiscent of the Erdtree's primordial form. Despite being born under the very same Erdtree that blessed all others, they were seen as accursed, as living reminders of a past that the Golden Order wished to forget. Their existence challenged the narrative of perfection and order that Marika sought to establish. Consequently, the Omen were subjected to brutal discrimination and persecution. They were often confined to the outskirts of society, forced to live in squalor, or in many cases outright imprisoned. Their horns were sometimes sawn off in agonizing rituals, a cruel attempt to erase their blemishes and force them into conformity with the Golden Order's aesthetic ideals. This systematic marginalization created a deep, festering wound within the supposedly perfect society of the Golden Age, a testament to the darker undercurrents beneath the Erdtree's golden facade. The Omen became a silent, suffering population, their cries unheard, their existence a testament to the Golden Order's intolerance of anything that deviated from its rigid definition of grace. Within this complex tapestry of power and prejudice, Queen Marika and Godfrey, the first Elden Lord, bore 3 children, each destined to play a pivotal role in the unfolding drama of the lands between. Their firstborn was Godwyn the Golden, a paragon of the Golden Order, embodying its ideals of beauty, strength, and divine grace. Godwyn was everything the Golden Order championed: noble, valiant, and beloved by all. He was the perfect heir, a living testament to the Erdtree's blessings and Marika's divine lineage. His birth was celebrated throughout the lands between, hailed as a sign of continued prosperity and divine favor. He was raised in the heart of the capital, groomed for leadership, and revered as a symbol of hope and stability. However, the subsequent births of their other 2 children, Morgott and Mog, brought a stark contrast to Godwyn's perfect image. Both Morgott and Mog were born as Omen, bearing the physical manifestations of the Crucible's ancient power. Their births were a profound challenge to the Golden Order's narrative of purity and perfection. To publicly acknowledge Omen children born to the divine Queen Marika and the first Elden Lord would have shattered the carefully constructed illusion of the Golden Order's absolute purity. Thus, in a cruel act of concealment and suppression, Morgott and Mog were hidden away from the world. They were confined to the subterranean shunning grounds, a vast labyrinthine network of sewers and forgotten chambers beneath the capital city of Leyndell. This subterranean prison became their world, a dark and lonely existence, far removed from the golden light of the Erdtree that their brother Godwyn so effortlessly enjoyed. Their existence was a closely guarded secret, a stain on the Golden Order's immaculate facade, and a testament to the lengths Marika would go to maintain her carefully cultivated image. Even as the Golden Order consolidated its power and grappled with its internal contradictions, external threats still loomed. One of the most formidable challenges Godfrey faced was the ancient and powerful race of fire giants, who dwelled in the treacherous mountaintops of the giants. These colossal beings worshipped a fell god, a fiery deity whose power rivaled even that of the Erdtree in its destructive potential. The fire giants possessed the ability to wield the Flame of Ruin, a catastrophic fire that threatened to consume the Erdtree itself. Godfrey, ever the unwavering champion of Marika, led his armies into the frigid peaks, embarking on a grueling campaign against these formidable foes. The battles were epic in scale, pitting the might of the Golden Order against the primordial fury of the fire giants. Godfrey's strategic genius and unparalleled combat prowess were put to the ultimate test. He faced down the fell god, engaging in a titanic struggle that shook the very foundations of the mountains. Ultimately, Godfrey emerged victorious, defeating the fire giant's deity and sealing away the flame of ruin, preventing its destructive power from ever reaching the Erdtree. This victory was a monumental achievement, solidifying the Golden Order's dominance and removing one of the greatest existential threats to its continued existence. Following the defeat of their fell god, the fire giants were subjugated, their power broken, and their threat neutralized. As a final act of subjugation and a perpetual ward against the flame of ruin, the last remaining fire giant was cursed to eternally guard the sealed flame. This lone giant, a colossal figure with a gaping maw on its chest where the flame once burned, became a living monument to Godfrey's triumph and a grim reminder of the consequences of defying the Golden Order. Its existence was a perpetual penance, a symbol of the Golden Order's absolute power and its willingness to impose eternal suffering upon those who dared to challenge its supremacy. This act not only secured the lands between from the threat of the flame of ruin, but also served as a powerful deterrent to any other potential challengers to Marika's rule. With the fire giants dealt with, Godfrey turned his attention to other remnants of defiance. His campaigns were relentless, driven by the singular purpose of unifying the lands between under the Erdtree. Among these remaining threats were the Stormhawks, proud and powerful avian beings who commanded the skies from their eyries in the distant reaches of the realm. These creatures, often ridden by skilled warriors, posed a significant challenge to the Golden Order's air superiority and control over strategic high ground. Godfrey, demonstrating his adaptability and comprehensive military strategy, led his forces against the Stormhawks, conquering their formidable eyries. These were not mere skirmishes, they were intricate aerial battles and daring assaults on mountain strongholds. Through sheer force of will and military might, Godfrey subdued the Stormhawks, integrating their power into the Golden Order's growing dominion. Some Stormhawks were tamed and pressed into service, their aerial prowess now serving the very power they once defied, a testament to Godfrey's ability to not only conquer, but also to assimilate and utilize the strengths of his defeated foes. This final campaign marked the effective completion of the unification of the lands between, ushering in an era of unprecedented peace and stability under the Golden Order. The stage was set for the continued prosperity of Marika's reign, a reign seemingly without end, yet as we shall see, even a golden age has its limits, and the seeds of its eventual decline were already being sown in the very fabric of its triumphs. As the golden age continued, marked by the Erdtree's resplendent glow and the burgeoning Golden Order, the very fabric of the lands between began to settle into a rhythm of gentle prosperity. It was during this period, after the formidable campaigns against the ancient dragons had secured a hard-won peace, that Godfrey, the first Elden Lord, solidified his dominion. His might was undeniable, his leadership absolute, yet even in this era of unparalleled power, whispers of a deeper, more subtle order began to emerge. The peace forged with Fortisax, a magnificent ancient dragon, after a long and arduous war, wasn't merely a cessation of hostilities. It was a profound testament to Godfrey's strategic prowess, and perhaps a nascent understanding between disparate powers. This accord, born of blood and fire, paved the way for a unique cultural exchange. Lanceax, another venerable ancient dragon, demonstrating an astonishing capacity for adaptation and diplomacy took on a human form. This wasn't a mere disguise, but a profound transformation, allowing her to commune directly with the Knights of the Golden Order. Imagine, if you will, the awe and reverence as a being of such ancient power, normally associated with devastating aerial assaults and fiery breath, walked among them, sharing wisdom and forging bonds that transcended species. This act underscored the Golden Order's ambition, not just to conquer, but to integrate and assimilate, bringing all under the Erdtree's benevolent, if sometimes demanding, sway. With widespread conflict largely subdued, the lands between, under the watchful eye of the Erdtree, began to truly flourish. Many hidden nooks and tranquil spots, previously known only to reclusive spirits or nomadic tribes, were now either established as places of quiet beauty or simply recognized for their inherent serenity. Think of the secluded groves where sunlight dappled through ancient leaves, the gentle murmur of unseen streams, or the quiet contemplation offered by panoramic vistas overlooking verdant valleys. These weren't necessarily constructed sanctuaries, but rather natural havens that, in the absence of constant warfare, could finally be appreciated. The sheer scale and variety of the lands between, from the towering cliffs of the mountain tops of the giants to the shimmering shores of Limgrave, offered an endless array of such peaceful locales. It was in these quiet corners that the very essence of the Golden Age's prosperity could be felt, not in grand pronouncements or military parades, but in the subtle beauty of a world at peace. Accompanying this newfound tranquility, the gentle ambient sounds of the world, from the rustling leaves of the towering minor Erdtrees to the distant calls of unseen wildlife, became a constant, almost therapeutic backdrop to daily life. The chirping of crickets at dusk, the sighing of the wind through ancient ruins, the distant lapping of waves against a forgotten shore, these were the unsung melodies of a world experiencing a rare period of widespread calm. It wasn't a silence, but a symphony of natural sounds, each contributing to an overarching sense of peace and stability. This auditory landscape, often overlooked in the grand narratives of power and conquest, nonetheless played a crucial role in shaping the experience of living in the lands between during this golden era. It spoke of a world that for a time was in balance, a world where the natural order held sway, undisturbed by the clamor of war. It was within this context of relative peace and profound natural beauty that a crucial concept, deeply embedded in the very fabric of the lands between, was either introduced or more likely formalized: the concept of rest at sites of grace. These ethereal, glowing vestiges of the Erdtree's blessing, emanating a soft, golden light, offered more than just a place to pause. They were profound spiritual anchors, providing a moment of respite and contemplation for weary travelers, knights, and common folk alike. At a site of grace, one could feel the gentle touch of the Erdtree's influence, a subtle replenishment of spirit, and perhaps a fleeting glimpse of the guiding light of grace. They served as beacons, not just geographically, but spiritually, reminding all who sought their solace of the Erdtree's omnipresent power and the Golden Order's foundational principles. The act of resting at a site of grace was a communion, a reaffirmation of one's connection to the divine order, and a brief reprieve from the rigors of existence, even in an age of prosperity. However, even as the Golden Order solidified its influence and the Erdtree's light shone brightest, the seeds of future discord were being sown, subtly at first, then with increasing clarity. The very concept of grace, so central to the Golden Order, also defined who was outside of it. The tarnished, a term that would later become synonymous with destiny and defiance, were those who had lost the grace of gold. Their eyes, once imbued with the golden light of the Erdtree, had dimmed, becoming dull and lifeless. This loss wasn't necessarily a punishment for a specific transgression, but rather a mysterious, almost existential fading of divine favor. It marked them as outsiders, as those no longer deemed worthy of the Erdtree's direct blessing. Consequently, these individuals, for reasons yet fully understood, were exiled from the lands between by Marika, the Eternal Queen. This wasn't a casual banishment, it was a definitive severing of ties, a decree that sent them across the treacherous fog-shrouded seas, far from the Erdtree's direct influence. This act, seemingly a minor detail in an age of prosperity, would prove to be a pivotal moment, shaping the destiny of the lands between for millennia to come. As the Golden Age reached its zenith, a curious and ultimately tragic irony began to unfold in the life of Godfrey, the first Elden Lord. Having conquered all formidable foes, having united the lands between under the Erdtree's banner, his strength, paradoxically, began to wane. Not physically, perhaps, but spiritually, existentially. There were no more grand campaigns to lead, no more monstrous beasts to fell, no more defiant kingdoms to bring to heel. The very source of his immense power, his insatiable warrior's spirit, found itself without an outlet. The thrill of battle, the challenge of conquest, had been the crucible in which his legend was forged, and now, in an era of peace he himself had created, that crucible was empty. This wasn't a decline due to age or illness, but a profound spiritual stagnation, a loss of purpose that gnawed at the heart of the greatest warrior the lands between had ever known. His golden aura, once vibrant and commanding, began to dim, mirroring the fading grace of the tarnished. Seeing this decline, and perhaps foreseeing the consequences of a restless, purposeless warrior of Godfrey's magnitude, Marika, in a decision shrouded in both necessity and profound sorrow, took the drastic step of removing his grace. This was not a physical act, but a divine decree, stripping him of the golden light that had guided him and empowered him throughout his reign. With this act, Godfrey, the first Elden Lord, became the first of the tarnished. He was exiled from the lands between, not alone, but with his loyal warriors, those who had fought alongside him through countless battles and whose own grace, perhaps, had also begun to dim in the absence of war. This was a profound moment, a seismic shift in the political and spiritual landscape of the lands between. The very foundation of the Golden Order, built upon Godfrey's strength and Marika's divine authority, was irrevocably altered. Godfrey, now Huara Lu, warrior, shedding the regal mantle of Elden Lord for a more primal identity, departed the lands between with his loyal warriors. This wasn't a quiet, ignominious retreat, but a defiant exodus. He carried with him not just his formidable strength, but also the spirit of a warrior who, though stripped of his divine favor, refused to be broken. His journey across the fog-shrouded seas was not merely a banishment, but a forging of a new destiny, a path that would eventually lead him back to the lands between, albeit under very different circumstances. His exile and that of his warriors created a diaspora, scattering these once favored individuals across the vast, unknown world beyond the lands between, unknowingly preparing them for a future return. Following, or perhaps concurrent with, Godfrey's exile came an event of cataclysmic proportions, an act so profound and devastating that it would forever alter the course of history. Marika shattered the Elden Ring. The exact timing of this event, relative to Godfrey's exile, is a subject of much scholarly debate within the lands between, with some believing it occurred shortly after, a desperate act born of burgeoning despair, while others posit it was a culmination of a longer, more insidious decline. Regardless of the precise sequence, the shattering was an act of immense power and profound consequence. The Elden Ring, the very embodiment of the Golden Order's principles and the source of its power, was fractured into great runes, each imbued with a fragment of its divine authority. This wasn't a mere breaking, it was a cosmic rupture, sending shockwaves across the lands between and plunging it into an era of unprecedented chaos. The motivations behind Marika's actions remain enigmatic, a mystery at the heart of the Golden Order's rise and fall. Was it an act of rebellion against the greater will, the outer god that had bestowed the Elden Ring upon her? Was it a desperate attempt to break a cycle, to create new possibilities for the lands between? Or was it a calculated move, a deliberate sacrifice designed to set in motion a grander, more intricate plan? These questions continue to echo through the ages, unanswered and perhaps unanswerable. With the departure of its greatest warrior and the shattering of its divine core, the age of the Erdtree's prosperity and Godfrey's reign concluded, not with a gentle fading, but with a dramatic and irreversible collapse. The golden glow of this era, once so vibrant and seemingly eternal, was irrevocably dimmed. The stability and order that Godfrey had so meticulously established and that Marika had maintained began to unravel. The Golden Order, once the undisputed ruling power, began its slow, inexorable decline after Godfrey's departure and the eventual shattering of the Elden Ring. The loss of its first Elden Lord, the very symbol of its martial might, created a power vacuum, a void that no other could truly fill. Then, the shattering of the Elden Ring itself, the very source of the Golden Order's authority and the foundation of its laws, plunged the lands between into an era of unprecedented instability. The great runes, once united within the Elden Ring, now became objects of desire and conflict, fought over by Marika's demigod children, each vying for supremacy and the power to reforge the ring in their own image. This internal strife, fueled by ambition and the fractured remnants of divine power, tore the lands between apart, leading to the devastating conflict known as the Shattering. Thus, the seeds of future conflict were sown, not just with the overt act of the Elden Ring's shattering, but also with the earlier, seemingly less significant, exile of the Tarnished. These banished individuals, sent across the seas, were destined to return, guided by the remnants of grace, to reclaim what was lost. Furthermore, the hidden omen, those born with cursed horns and exiled to the sewers beneath the capital, represented another festering wound within the Golden Order. Their existence, suppressed and ignored, was a testament to the Golden Order's hypocrisy and its tendency to cast aside those who did not conform to its rigid ideals. These two groups, the exiled Tarnished and the hidden omen, would in their own ways become crucial players in the unfolding drama of the lands between, their destinies intertwined with the fate of the shattered world. The era of prosperity, once so promising, ended not with a whimper, but with the resounding echo of a shattered divine artifact, signaling the dawn of a new, far more tumultuous age. And so, the Golden Order flourished, its light extending across the lands between, seemingly eternal under the watchful eye of Queen Marika and her Elden Lord Godfrey. But even the most brilliant gold can tarnish, and the grandest ages inevitably give way to upheaval. We now arrive at perhaps the most pivotal and certainly the most catastrophic period in the Lands Between's history, the Shattering, a calamity that ripped apart the very fabric of reality and plunged the world into an age of unending conflict. This era, simply known as the Shattering, marks the point of no return. It began with an act of unimaginable defiance. Marika, the very vessel of the Elden Ring, the divine construct that governed all of reality, shattered it. Her motivations remain shrouded in mystery, a question that has haunted scholars and tarnished alike for millennia. Was it a desperate bid for freedom from the greater will, the enigmatic outer god that had imposed its dominion upon the lands between? Or perhaps a calculated challenge, a radical act intended to force a new order, or even to dismantle the old one entirely? The echoes of her decision, however, reverberate through every inch of the decaying world you, the player, will explore. But the shattering of the Elden Ring itself was not the first crack in the Golden Order's facade. Preceding it, and inextricably linked to Marika's ultimate act, was a night of unparalleled horror, the Night of Black Knives. On this night, Godwyn the Golden, beloved son of Marika and Godfrey, and the very embodiment of the Golden Order's promise, became the first demigod to perish. Yet his death was unlike any other. His soul was murdered, extinguished by the shadowy assassins wielding the dreaded black knives, weapons imbued with a fragment of the rune of death. Crucially, his body, though lifeless, remained intact. This unnatural state, a soul dead but a body living, birthed the grotesque phenomenon known as the Prince of Death, a blight that would spread corruption throughout the roots of the Erdtree itself, manifesting as the death blight that plagues certain regions. The architects of this horrific act were not random brigands. The Night of Black Knives was a meticulously planned conspiracy, orchestrated by none other than Ranni the Witch, one of Marika's own offspring, though not by Godfrey. Ranni, a lunar princess, harbored a deep-seated resentment towards the Greater Will and its rigid Golden Order. She sought to free herself, and perhaps the entire lands between, from its suffocating influence. Her plan was audacious. By orchestrating the death of Godwyn's soul, she could achieve her own form of liberation. She arranged for her own body to die simultaneously with Godwyn's soul, creating a symmetrical death. Her soul, however, would survive, allowing her to shed her corporeal form and exist as a spirit, free from the greater will's grasp. This intricate ritual required a potent catalyst, the Rune of Death, or the Cis Rune of Death, also known as Destined Death, was once an integral part of the Elden Ring, representing the natural cycle of life and death. For reasons still debated, Marika had long ago sealed away this potent aspect of reality, entrusting its guardianship to her shadow, Malekith, the Black Blade. Malekith, a formidable beastman of immense power, bore the Rune of Death within his very being, a living prison, ensuring no one could wield its power. However, Ranni and her conspirators, a clandestine group of Newmen, managed the impossible. They stole a fragment of the Rune of Death from Malekith. The theft was a monumental undertaking, a testament to Ranni's cunning and the desperation of her allies. This stolen fragment, imbued into the Black Knives, was the key to Godwyn's soul death and the subsequent Night of Black Knives. The success of this heist and the resulting murder was the ultimate affront to the Golden Order, a wound from which it would never truly recover. With Godwyn's soul extinguished and the Rune of Death unleashed, even if only partially, the stage was set for Marika's final, desperate act. In the wake of her son's unnatural demise, and perhaps spurred by the realization that the Greater Will's order was not as infallible as it seemed, Marika shattered the Elden Ring. This act was not a simple breaking, it was an explosion of cosmic energy, tearing apart the very laws of causality and reality that the Elden Ring had maintained. The lands between, once a realm of divine order, was plunged into utter chaos. The golden light of the Erdtree, though still standing, seemed to dim, and the once harmonious balance of power was irrevocably broken. The immediate consequence of this cataclysm was the scattering of the Grisangukshiki runes. These were not mere shards. They were powerful fragments of the Elden Ring itself, each imbued with immense power and representing a specific aspect of the shattered divine order. These great runes were dispersed among Marika's demigod offspring, her children and stepchildren, each claiming a piece of their mother's shattered divinity. The inheritance, however, was not a blessing, but a curse. With the Elden Ring broken and its unifying power gone, the demigods, once bound by the Golden Order and the authority of Marika, descended into madness and ambition. Each possessed a great rune, a tangible piece of the Elden Ring's power, and each believed themselves destined to become the next Elden Lord, to mend the ring and claim dominion over the lands between. This shared ambition, fueled by their inherent power and often twisted by the trauma of the Shattering, ignited a brutal and protracted conflict known as the Shattering War. Brother fought sister, and cousin fought cousin in a desperate struggle for supremacy. The once proud armies of the Golden Order were fractured, loyalties divided, and the lands themselves became battlegrounds for these warring demigods. The devastation was immense, leaving countless casualties and scarring the landscape in ways that would never fully heal. Among the most devastating of these conflicts was the epic clash between two of the most powerful demigods, Malenia, the blade of Miquella, and Radagon, the star scourge. Malenia, a formidable warrior afflicted by the dreaded scarlet rot, a horrifying disease that slowly consumes its victims, was a demigod of unparalleled martial prowess. Radagon, a giant of a man, a master of gravity magic, and a general of immense strategic skill, was equally fearsome. Their armies met in the desolate plains of Ekisnal-Kaelidisu, a region that would forever bear the scars of their encounter. The battle was a maelstrom of steel, magic, and unimaginable destruction. As the tide of battle turned against her, and faced with Radagon's overwhelming might, Malenia unleashed her ultimate power, succumbing fully to the scarlet rot. This catastrophic act, known as Malenia's Scarlet Aeonia, caused a massive bloom of the cursed scarlet rot in Caelid. The very air became toxic, the ground turned crimson and festering, and all life within the region was twisted and corrupted. Caelid, once a vibrant land, was transformed into a blighted wasteland, a testament to the raw, destructive power of the demigods. Radagon, despite his incredible resilience, was caught in the epicenter of this devastating attack. He survived, but at a terrible cost. The scarlet rot afflicted him, not killing him outright, but slowly consuming his mind, driving him into a state of perpetual, ravenous madness. He became a shadow of his former self, a colossal beast driven by instinct and hunger, forever wandering the wastes of Caelid. Yet even in his madness, Radagon's immense power had one lingering, crucial effect. Before his descent into insanity, Radhan had learned gravity magic to such a profound degree that he was able to hold the very stars in place. He did this to prevent the natural descent of the stars, a celestial event that would have profound implications for the fate of the lands between, particularly for Ranni's destiny. Even in his mad state, his sheer will and power continued to exert this cosmic influence. The stars remained frozen in the sky, a silent testament to his former glory and a constant reminder of the horrific power unleashed in Caelid. While the most powerful demigods waged their brutal wars, others, less formidable, sought power through different means. Godric the Grafted, one of the weakest of Marika's direct descendants, fled the front lines of the Shattering War. He established himself in Limgrave, the initial region the Tarnished, will explore. Driven by an insatiable desire for power and a deep-seated insecurity about his own weakness, Godric embarked on a gruesome endeavor. He began grafting sorts body parts from defeated warriors and even innocent victims onto his own form. He believed that by accumulating the strength and skill of others, he could overcome his own inherent feebleness and rise to prominence, a twisted reflection of the demigod's insatiable hunger for power. This grotesque practice, a desperate attempt to gain strength, became his defining characteristic, marking him as a particularly vile and pathetic figure among the warring demigods. The Shattering, therefore, was not a singular event, but a cascade of interconnected tragedies. Marika's defiance, Ranni's conspiracy, Godwyn's unnatural death, the theft of destined death, the shattering of the Elden Ring itself, and the subsequent descent of the demigods into fratricidal war, all combined to create a broken world. The once golden age had ended, replaced by an era of perpetual conflict, decay, and madness. The lands were scarred, the people suffered, and the very concept of order had been shattered. This was the world that awaited the arrival of the Tarnished, a world desperately in need of a new Elden Lord, or perhaps a new age entirely. The stage was set for a desperate struggle where only the strongest or the most cunning could hope to survive, and perhaps to mend the broken world. As the echoes of the Shattering continued to reverberate across the lands between, the once unified Golden Order fractured into countless pieces, leaving behind a landscape scarred by conflict and personal tragedies. While the demigods waged war for control of the shattered Elden Ring, other powerful figures, driven by their own ambitions or despair, retreated into their own isolated worlds, further fragmenting the already broken realm. Rennala, Queen of the Full Moon, a figure of immense magical prowess, and the former consort of Radagon, found herself utterly consumed by grief following his abrupt departure to become Marika's second consort. Her once unwavering mind, already fragile from the betrayal, shattered alongside the Elden Ring. She retreated deep within the grand library of Raya Lucarian Academy, the very heart of Carian sorcery, where she had once presided over a flourishing intellectual empire. There, amidst countless scrolls and arcane texts, she cradled the Amber Egg, a gift from Radagon, believing it to be her beloved, reborn. This act of profound delusion became her sole focus, her entire existence revolving around the futile attempt to rebirth her lost love, a process that, while unsuccessful in its ultimate aim, did allow her to endlessly rebirth her own children, the Carian royal family, albeit in a perpetually youthful, unaging state. Her retreat was not merely physical, it was a complete withdrawal from the world, leaving the academy to be governed by the Carian royal family and its fiercely loyal Cuckoo Knights, who continued to uphold her legacy and protect the vast repository of knowledge she had amassed. Her sorrow, a palpable presence within the library's hallowed halls, served as a constant, mournful counterpoint to the raging conflicts outside, a testament to the personal cost of the divine machinations that had torn her family apart. Meanwhile, in a desperate bid to overcome the incurable scarlet rot that afflicted his twin sister, Millennia, Blade of Miquella, the Empyrean Miquella, a being of eternal youth and immense potential, began to construct the Haligtree. This colossal, artificial tree, grown from his own flesh and blood, was intended to be a haven, a sanctuary where he could cultivate a new form of life, free from the influence of the outer gods and the Golden Order. Miquella, ever the benevolent and compassionate demigod, sought to cure all ills, not just Millennia's rot. His ultimate ambition was to ascend to godhood, not through conquest or violence, but through a gentle, unifying love that would embrace all living things. He envisioned himself as a new, benevolent deity, one who would usher in an age of peace and healing, a stark contrast to the often harsh and unforgiving nature of the existing order. The Haligtree, a testament to his unwavering determination and profound empathy, slowly grew, nurtured by his own life force, promising a new dawn for the lands between. However, this ambitious project, this beacon of hope, was tragically interrupted. Mohg, the Lord of Blood, an omen demigod and a half-brother to Marika, driven by a perverse and obsessive devotion to Miquella, launched a daring and brutal raid on the Haligtree. Mohg, who had long chafed under the oppression of the Golden Order and the stigma of his omen heritage, saw Miquella as his destined consort, a pure and unblemished Empyrean through whom he could establish his own dynasty, the Mohgwyn dynasty, and usher in an age of blood and debauchery. He believed that by raising Miquella to godhood under his own influence, he could usurp the existing cosmic order and establish a new one, centered around the enigmatic, formless mother, an outer god of primordial blood and violence. In a swift and devastating act, Mohg abducted Miquella from the Haligtree, tearing him from his cocoon, and spirited him away to his hidden palace beneath Caelid, the Mohgwyn dynasty mausoleum. There, within the confines of his blood-soaked sanctuary, Mohg meticulously nurtured Miquella's comatose body within a grotesque, blood-filled cocoon, patiently awaiting the day his beloved would awaken and embrace his new, blood-drenched destiny as his divine consort. This act of abduction not only shattered Millennia's hope of a cure, but also plunged the Haligtree into an era of desperate defense, as its inhabitants, the misbegotten and the clean-wrought knights, fought tirelessly against the encroaching forces of rot and the lingering threat of Mohg's return. Another demigod, Rykard, Lord of Blasphemy, driven by a profound and radical rejection of the Erdtree and the Golden Order, chose a path of ultimate defiance. Unlike his siblings who sought to claim the Elden Ring or establish new orders, Rykard embraced a philosophy of absolute blasphemy, believing that the only way to truly break free from the oppressive influence of the greater will was to devour and assimilate all that it represented. He journeyed to the depths of Mount Gelmir, to the Volcano Manor, a fortress steeped in ancient rituals and forbidden knowledge. There, in a shocking act of self-sacrifice and rebellion, he fed himself to the god-devouring serpent, an ancient primordial entity that embodied the very antithesis of the Golden Order. This grotesque assimilation was not an act of submission, but a deliberate choice to become one with the serpent, transforming into a monstrous, immortal entity that would forever consume gods and demigods, growing ever stronger with each devoured soul. His goal was to ultimately devour the Erdtree itself, to erase its existence and the oppressive dogma it represented, ushering in an age of utter chaos and freedom from divine decree. The Volcano Manor, under the leadership of his adopted daughter, Tanith, became a sanctuary for those who sought to defy the Erdtree, a haven for tarnished and other outcasts who embraced the path of blasphemy, dedicating themselves to the hunt and consumption of demigods. Amidst this maelstrom of conflict and personal tragedy, Morgott, the Omen King, a figure of immense power and unwavering loyalty, took on the thankless task of secretly defending Leyndell, the royal capital. Despite being an omen, born with grotesque horns and despised by the Golden Order, Morgott harbored a deep and unconditional love for the Erdtree and the capital. He was an outcast, a pariah, yet he was also its most ardent protector. From the shadows, he repelled countless assaults from his own demigod siblings, who in their insatiable hunger for the Elden Ring sought to breach the capital's defenses. He fought tirelessly, often under the guise of the Fell Omen, a monstrous entity that would strike down any who dared to threaten Leyndell. His loyalty was a poignant paradox, a testament to the complex and often contradictory nature of the lands between. He was a king who could not openly rule, a protector who was reviled by those he protected, a tragic figure whose unwavering dedication to a system that rejected him was both heartbreaking and awe-inspiring. His solitary vigil, a constant battle against both external threats and internal prejudice, served as a grim reminder of the sacrifices made to preserve a semblance of order in a world teetering on the brink of utter collapse. Despite the all-encompassing conflict of the Shattering, a surprising truth emerged. Many areas across the vast and diverse lands between remained untouched by the direct fighting. While the major power centers and strategic locations bore the brunt of the demigods' wars, the sheer scale of the realm allowed for vast stretches of land to preserve their natural tranquility. Remote villages, secluded forests, hidden caves, and forgotten ruins, often overlooked by the warring factions, continued to exist in a state of serene isolation. These untouched pockets of peace offered a stark contrast to the ravaged battlefields, a testament to the enduring beauty and resilience of the natural world. The gentle rustling of leaves in Limgrave's forests, the tranquil flow of rivers in Liurnia, and the quiet solitude of the Weeping Peninsula's shores remained largely undisturbed, their ecosystems continuing to thrive, oblivious to the grand power struggles unfolding elsewhere. This preservation of natural tranquility served as a quiet counterpoint to the widespread destruction, a subtle reminder that even in the darkest of times, pockets of untouched beauty can endure. Furthermore, the lingering presence of the Erdtree's grace, though undeniably diminished by the Shattering and the absence of Marika's direct influence, still offered moments of profound peace and guidance. The golden light, once a pervasive and guiding force, now manifested in more subtle and localized ways, often appearing as faint whispers of light or fleeting visions, particularly to those who were open to its influence. These moments of grace, though less potent than before, served as a beacon of hope, a gentle reminder of the Erdtree's enduring power and its potential for restoration. For those weary travelers and lost souls, these fleeting glimpses of grace provided comfort and direction, a spiritual anchor in a world adrift. It was a testament to the Erdtree's deep-rooted connection to the very fabric of the lands between, a connection that even the most catastrophic events could not entirely sever. The sheer vastness of the world, with its sprawling continents, towering mountains, and hidden valleys, further contributed to the existence of these untouched havens, allowing for endless exploration and the discovery of quiet, secluded locations. Beyond the well trodden paths and the battle scarred landscapes lay a multitude of forgotten corners, ancient ruins, and serene natural wonders waiting to be rediscovered. These hidden gems, often requiring arduous journeys to reach, offered respite from the constant turmoil, places where one could momentarily escape the echoes of war and find solace in solitude. The world, in its immensity, held countless secrets, not just of power and conflict, but also of peace and forgotten histories, inviting those with a spirit of adventure to seek them out. It was into this fractured, war-torn, yet still incredibly vast and mysterious world that the Tarnished, once exiled from the lands between for their lack of grace, were called back. The guidance of grace, though diminished, now specifically sought out these fated heroes, those who had once been cast out, to return and reclaim their destiny. The call was not a gentle invitation, but an urgent summons, a desperate plea from a dying world. The Elden Ring, shattered and scattered, needed to be reassembled, and a new Elden Lord needed to be crowned to restore order to the lands between. This guidance, appearing as faint, golden motes of light, directed the Tarnished towards the remnants of grace, guiding them through treacherous landscapes and past formidable foes, all in pursuit of their ultimate goal, to become the Elden Lord. Their journey was not merely a quest for power, but a pilgrimage to heal a wounded world, to mend the very fabric of existence that had been torn asunder. As the shattering finally subsided, leaving behind a landscape irrevocably altered, the lands between were left in a state of perpetual twilight and decay. The once vibrant golden glow of the Erdtree was now muted, casting a pallor over the land, a constant reminder of the world's broken state. The grand cities lay in ruins. The once fertile lands were scarred by war and rot, and the very air seemed heavy with the weight of sorrow and loss. The age of the Golden Order, as it was once known, had ended, replaced by an era of uncertainty and desolation. The world awaited a new order, a new Elden Lord, to either restore it to its former glory or forge a completely new path, a path yet unknown. The stage was set for the arrival of the Tarnished, for their choices would ultimately determine the fate of the lands between, ushering in either an age of restoration, an age of despair, or something entirely new, born from the ashes of the Shattering. The long night had fallen, and the dawn, whatever form it might take, was yet to come. And so, as the echoes of the Shattering, that cataclysmic war between demigods, began to fade into a bitter memory, we arrive at the present day, the so-called Tarnished Era. It is a time of lingering despair, yet also one of nascent hope, as a new champion is called forth. Our journey commences with the awakening of the Tarnished. You, the player, a warrior exiled from the lands between long ago and now returned. You stir in the Chapel of Anticipation, a desolate, crumbling structure perched precariously on a cliff edge, its purpose now merely to serve as a starting point for those who would challenge fate. Your initial moments are marked by a guiding hand, or rather a guiding spirit, that of a spectral maiden, her form ethereal and her voice a whisper of forgotten purpose. She is a silent harbinger, a symbolic representation of the grace that has long abandoned the Tarnished, yet now begins to stir once more. This awakening is not merely physical, it is a spiritual rebirth, a reignition of the ambition to become Elden Lord, to mend the fractured world, or perhaps to shatter it anew. However, this initial foray into the lands between is often short lived and brutally instructive. Almost immediately, the Tarnished is confronted by the grafted Scion, a grotesque amalgamation of flesh and steel, a product of Godric the Grafted's depraved experiments. This encounter, designed as a tutorial in futility, serves to underscore the sheer power and monstrous nature of the foes that lie ahead. The Tarnished, typically ill-equipped and unprepared, is summarily slain, their nascent journey cut short before it truly begins. Yet death in the lands between is not an end, but a transition. The Tarnished is resurrected, not in the chapel of anticipation, but in the stranded graveyard, a subterranean expanse beneath the very cliffs where they first awoke. This graveyard, with its eerie glow and silent sentinels, feels like a purgatory, a place of transition where the dead linger and new beginnings are forged from failure. It is here that the true struggle commences, a struggle not just against formidable enemies, but against the very despair that permeates the land. Upon emerging from the stranded graveyard into the nascent light of Limgrave, you are greeted by Vare, a figure shrouded in white, his demeanor as unsettling as his words. Vare, a self-proclaimed servant of the Lord of Blood, Mog, offers what appears to be guidance, but it is laced with thinly veiled mockery. He highlights your maidenless status, a crucial detail in this world. In the lands between, a finger maiden is a vital companion for a Tarnished, one who can channel the power of the Erdtree's grace into runes, allowing a Tarnished to grow stronger. Without a maiden, a Tarnished is effectively adrift, unable to truly progress. Vare's taunts, though seemingly cruel, serve to articulate the core challenge of your quest, to find a path to power, with or without a maiden. His presence also subtly foreshadows the darker, more unsettling factions at play in the lands between, factions that offer alternative paths to power, often at a terrible cost. He represents the first overt temptation, the first whisper of an easier, albeit more sinister, way forward. From this point, the Tarnished truly begins their venture into Limgrave, the starting region of the lands between. Limgrave is a land of rolling hills, ancient ruins, and treacherous coastlines, a microcosm of the shattered world. It is here that you encounter the first sights of grace, shimmering beacons of golden light that serve as checkpoints, rest stops, and most importantly, guides. These sites of grace are not merely save points. They are remnants of the Erdtree's blessing, vestiges of the greater will's influence that point the way forward towards the golden path, towards the Erdtree itself. By interacting with these sites, the Tarnished begins to understand their purpose, to follow the guidance of grace, to gather strength, and to challenge the demigods who hold shards of the Elden Ring. Each site of grace offers a moment of respite, a chance to reflect, to level up, and to prepare for the next challenge. They are the breadcrumbs of hope in a world consumed by despair. It is at one such site of grace that a pivotal encounter takes place. Melina, a mysterious young woman with a scarred eye and an enigmatic smile, appears before the Tarnished. Her arrival is not coincidental. It is a direct response to the Tarnished's maidenless predicament. Melina offers an accord. She will serve as your finger maiden, channeling the power of runes to strengthen you in exchange for your guidance to the Erdtree. Her motives are initially shrouded in mystery, her past hinted at but never fully revealed. She speaks of a duty, a burning conviction, and a desire to reach the Erdtree for reasons she only vaguely alludes to. This pact is the turning point for the Tarnished, transforming them from a wandering exile into a true contender for the Elden Throne. With Melina by your side, the path forward becomes clearer, though no less perilous. She represents not just a means to power, but a companion, a voice of reason, and a source of lore and insight into the fractured history of the lands between. As a testament to her commitment and a practical aid for the arduous journey ahead, Melina bestows upon the Tarnished a spectral steed named Torrent. Torrent is no ordinary horse. He is a spirit, a manifestation of the lands between's mystical essence, capable of appearing and disappearing at will. His presence drastically alters the scope of exploration, allowing the Tarnished to traverse vast distances with speed and agility. Torrent's double jump ability and his capacity to scale certain vertical surfaces open up entirely new avenues of exploration, transforming the landscape from a series of confined paths into an expansive, interconnected world. The bond with Torrent is unspoken, yet profound, a silent partnership forged in the crucible of shared adventure. He is a symbol of freedom, a tool for escape, and a loyal companion in a world where loyalty is a rare commodity. His very existence underscores the magical and spiritual underpinnings of the lands between, where even mounts are imbued with extraordinary powers. Beyond the immediate objectives of defeating demigods and collecting great runes, the lands between beckon with a different kind of reward: discovery. The Tarnished, in their relentless exploration, uncovers numerous hidden locations that offer a much-needed respite from the constant threat of combat and the oppressive atmosphere of decay. These are not always grand, lore-heavy areas, but often secluded caves, forgotten grottos, or scenic overlooks that provide moments of quiet contemplation. Imagine stumbling upon a small, sun-dappled glade hidden behind a waterfall, its air thick with the scent of wildflowers, or discovering a silent underground lake reflecting the faint light from above. These are places where the ambient music softens, where the sounds of distant battle fade, and for a brief moment, the player can simply be. These moments of serenity are crucial, not just for the player's mental well-being, but for reinforcing the idea that even in a world as broken as the lands between, beauty and peace can still be found if one only knows where to look. They are reminders that the world is not solely defined by its suffering. One such region that embodies this serene beauty is the Weeping Peninsula. Accessible early in the game, though often overlooked by those rushing to the next major boss, the Weeping Peninsula stands in stark contrast to the immediate dangers of Limgrave. It is a land of rolling hills, ancient ruins, and a melancholic beauty, perpetually bathed in a soft, ethereal light. The name itself suggests a certain sadness, yet its atmosphere is one of profound tranquility. Here, the enemies are generally less aggressive, the landscapes more open and inviting. The crumbling Castle Morn, perched precariously on its southern tip, tells a tale of past conflict, but the surrounding lands offer a sense of calm. Exploring the Weeping Peninsula feels like stepping into a forgotten dream, a place where time moves slower and the weight of the world lifts, if only for a moment. It provides a vital counterpoint to the relentless aggression of other regions, demonstrating the diverse emotional landscapes that the lands between encompass. It allows the player to appreciate the artistic design of the world, to truly soak in the atmosphere without the constant pressure of imminent threat. This intentional design choice reinforces the idea that exploration is not solely about combat and loot, but also about experiencing the world itself, its beauty and its sorrow. As the Tarnished continues their journey through Limgrave, they encounter a variety of characters, each with their own struggles and motivations. One such character is Kenneth Haight, a self-proclaimed noble seeking to reclaim his Fort Haight, from the demi-humans who have occupied it. Kenneth is a pompous, somewhat ineffectual figure, yet his plight highlights the ongoing conflicts and localized skirmishes that plague the lands between, even in this era of grander, more cosmic struggles. His quest, though seemingly minor in the grand scheme of things, serves as a reminder that the Shattering didn't just affect the demigods, it fractured society at every level, leaving countless individuals to fend for themselves and attempt to restore some semblance of order to their own small corners of the world. His presence grounds the epic narrative in relatable human struggles, reminding the player that even amidst prophecies and demigods, there are still ordinary people fighting for their homes and their honor. His story, though not directly tied to the main quest, adds depth to the world, illustrating the ripple effects of the Shattering and the pervasive nature of conflict. A significant, yet often subtle contributor to the game's unique atmosphere is its ambient music and sound design. This is particularly evident in non-combat zones, such as the Church of Ella. The Church of Ella, an early game hub where you first meet Kale, the nomadic merchant, is a prime example. Here the music is soft, ethereal, and melancholic, often featuring gentle string instruments and distant echoing vocals. The sound of a crackling bonfire, the gentle rustle of leaves, and the distant, almost imperceptible sounds of the environment create a sense of profound peace. These soundscapes are intentionally calming, designed to provide moments of auditory respite from the often stressful combat encounters and the unsettling sounds of hostile environments. They invite the player to slow down, to absorb the atmosphere, and to find a moment of quiet contemplation. This deliberate choice in sound design elevates the experience beyond mere gameplay, turning exploration into a sensory journey where even the absence of overt threat becomes a form of comfort. It is in these moments that the player can truly appreciate the artistry of the world, allowing the intricate details of the environment to wash over them, fostering a deeper connection to the game's narrative and its emotional core. The subtle hum of the Erdtree, the distant cries of wildlife, and the gentle wind through the ruins all contribute to a tapestry of sound that is both beautiful and haunting. Further into Limgrave, the Tarnished stumbles upon the serene Mistwood, a dense, so ancient forest shrouded in an eternal twilight. This area, with its towering trees and pervasive fog, feels like a place out of time. Here, the player might encounter the sleeping rune bear, a massive, slumbering beast that, despite its potential ferocity, contributes to the forest's tranquil, almost primeval atmosphere when undisturbed. More significantly, the Mistwood is where the spirit of Blood, a half-wolf warrior and loyal shadow to Ranni the Witch, can be heard howling. Though his physical form may not be present initially, his mournful cries guide the Tarnished to a hidden questline, one that will eventually lead to deeper lore and significant choices. The Mistwood exemplifies the game's ability to blend potential danger with profound beauty, where even the sounds of a powerful creature can contribute to a sense of natural wonder rather than immediate alarm. It is a place where nature reigns supreme, untamed and ancient, offering a glimpse into the raw, untamed essence of the lands between. The discovery of Bled's spirit howling in the Mistwood is often a player's first encounter with the deeper, more intricate character narratives that lie beneath the surface of the main quest, hinting at the vast, interconnected web of stories waiting to be unraveled. Indeed, for many players, the act of exploring and uncovering lore, even the dark and often tragic lore about the Shattering and the demigods, can be a deeply meditative experience. The slow pace of discovery, the piecing together of fragmented narratives from item descriptions, environmental details, and cryptic dialogues becomes a form of intellectual engagement that transcends mere entertainment. There's a profound satisfaction in connecting seemingly disparate pieces of information, in understanding the motivations behind the cataclysmic events that shaped the world. Even when the lore reveals tales of betrayal, madness, and suffering, the process of learning and understanding can be surprisingly calming, akin to solving a complex puzzle. It allows the player to delve deeper into the world's history, to empathize with its characters, and to gain a richer appreciation for the intricate tapestry of its design. This intellectual engagement, this quiet contemplation of a shattered history, offers a different kind of serenity, one born from understanding rather than pure peace. It is the serenity of knowledge, of making sense of chaos. Perhaps one of the most breathtaking examples of this serene discovery is the peaceful Siofra River, an ancient underground civilization bathed in an eternal, artificial starlight. Access to Siofra River requires a descent into the depths, a journey that often feels like entering another world entirely. Here, massive, silent ruins stand under a canopy of shimmering blue and purple lights, resembling a subterranean cosmos. Giant, spectral ancestral spirits roam the plains, their movements graceful and otherworldly. The music in Siofra River is hauntingly beautiful, a blend of ethereal choirs and gentle strings that evokes a sense of ancient mystery and profound peace. There are no harsh suns, no blighted landscapes, only the quiet majesty of a forgotten civilization. The Siofra River is a testament to the artistic vision of the game, a place of unparalleled beauty that offers a stark contrast to the surface world's decay. It is a sanctuary, a place where the tarnished can wander in awe, contemplating the grandeur of what once was, and the enduring beauty that persists even in the deepest shadows of the lands between. This discovery is often a turning point for players, revealing the true depth and variety of the world, and solidifying the idea that the lands between are not just a battleground, but a place of profound wonder and ancient secrets, waiting patiently to be unearthed. The sheer scale and ethereal beauty of Siofra River etch themselves into the player's memory, a lasting impression of the game's capacity for awe-inspiring tranquility amidst the chaos. The tarnished, ever a seeker, then turns their attention to the enigmatic figure of Ranni the Witch, a lunar princess whose questline offers not only a path to an alternative ending, but also a deeper, more profound understanding of the cosmos itself. Their journey with Ranni begins with a chance encounter at Ranni's Rise, one of the three Carrion towers in Liurnia, where her spectral form first appears, inviting the Tarnished into a world of ancient lunar magic and intricate political machinations. This quest, a sprawling narrative that weaves through some of the most iconic locations in the lands between, requires the Tarnished to navigate the treacherous Ainsel River, descend into the subterranean depths of Noxtella, the Eternal City, and ultimately confront the formidable Baleful Shadow, a spectral assassin dispatched by the Two Fingers to thwart Ranni's ambitions. Along the way, the Tarnished assists Ranni's loyal retainers, including the stoic Blide, the cunning Iji, and the mysterious Seluvis, each with their own tragic fates, intertwined with Ranni's grand design. The culmination of this intricate quest leads the Tarnished to the Cathedral of Manus Salis, a celestial observatory high above Liurnia, where Ranni, having shed her corporeal form, merges with the very essence of the moon, ushering in the Age of Stars. This ending, a stark contrast to the traditional path of becoming Elden Lord, represents a rejection of the Golden Order and an embrace of a cosmic, ethereal future for the lands between, a future governed by the quiet wisdom of the moon rather than the fiery dominion of the Erdtree. For the Tarnished, this journey with Ranni is not merely a means to an end, but a transformative experience, revealing the vastness of the universe and the intricate dance of cosmic forces that shape destiny. It is a path of introspection and profound discovery where the boundaries of reality blur and the influence of the outer gods becomes undeniably apparent, offering a glimpse into the true nature of the Elden Ring and its place within the grand tapestry of existence. Having delved into the cosmic mysteries with Ranni, the Tarnished then ventures into the tranquil, yet undeniably harsh mountain tops of the Giants. This sprawling, snow-laden region, perched at the northernmost reaches of the lands between, presents a stark contrast to the verdant landscapes and ancient ruins encountered thus far. Despite the biting winds, the treacherous ice formations, and the formidable foes that patrol its frozen peaks, the mountaintops of the Giants offer moments of quiet beauty and profound solitude. The vast, unbroken expanses of snow, reflecting the pale, often overcast sky, create a sense of ethereal calm, a stark, almost pristine wilderness untouched by the more overt conflicts of the Golden Order. Here, the Tarnished can find solace in the sheer scale of the landscape, the towering peaks that pierce the clouds, and the ancient, gnarled trees that stand as silent sentinels against the relentless cold. The sound of the wind, a constant mournful hum, becomes a meditative presence, inviting contemplation amidst the vastness. It is in this unforgiving environment that the Tarnished encounters the remnants of the ancient fire giants, a race once mighty, but now reduced to a single, colossal guardian of the Forge of the Giants. The struggle against this fiery behemoth, a creature of immense power and tragic history, is a test of endurance and resolve, a necessary step in the Tarnished's ultimate quest. Yet even in the midst of such a monumental confrontation, the sheer raw beauty of the environment pervades, a testament to the enduring power of nature in the lands between. The distant, shimmering lights of the Erdtree, visible even from these remote heights, serve as a constant reminder of the ultimate goal, a beacon of hope and destiny amidst the frozen wilderness. The mountaintops of the Giants, then, represent a crucible, a place where the Tarnished spirit is tested and refined